Hi, everybody. My name is Jared Milrad. I'm the founder of Movie Karma, and we're the nonprofit organization that created our podcast here called Rewriting Hollywood, which I know, as many of you are aware, focuses on inclusion, equity, representation, as well as social impact through the power of storytelling. We've been doing this work to really spotlight folks around the world who are making a difference to the power of story, but also talk about issues of how we make Hollywood more inclusive, equitable, and representative. And today, really excited to have another special guest for a film that's really powerful, relevant, timely, and I think you'll enjoy the conversation. The filmmaker's name is Mitch Kalisa. He's joining us from London today, and the film is called Play It Safe, which addresses ingrained prejudice in the classroom. It's been selected for BFI. It received an online premiere back in October. And it's a really powerful piece that I'm excited to talk to Mitch about today. So Mitch, thanks so much for being on the show. I'm really excited to have you on.
Thanks, Jared. No, it's great to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's dive in. I saw originally, Mitch, you hail from Rwanda. You came to the UK as a child via Uganda, and you first got into film and theater through acting, and then kind of got into writing and directing. So I was curious if you could talk us through a little bit of that journey, Mitch, just a little bit of your background and how did you come to filmmaking?
No, as you said there, I was born in Rwanda, I grew up in Uganda, and moved to the UK when I was around 11. And yeah, when I came to the UK, I guess very quickly, I was always into films. I was a big, just like film buff, I guess, from childhood. So, but I really, at that stage, I was really into like action movies, Sylvester Stallone, Chuck Norris, Arnold Schwarzenegger. That was the stuff that I grew up on. And then, when I came to the UK, kind of broadened my horizons, I guess, with what I was consuming. And I thought I really wanted to act. So from teenagehood, I was going to like drama classes on the weekends and after school. And I pursued that for most of my teens, thinking that was something I wanted to do. But as I got older, I kind of realized that it wasn't so much the acting that I loved, it was the storytelling. It was coming up with ideas, coming up with scripts, and then once I kind of discovered that and I got into writing and directing, I did a filmmaking course at university. So it was a kind of open course where you could do all kinds of filmmaking, and I focused on like more experimental filmmaking as well as directing talent. And then shortly after uni, me and a friend set up a small production company making branded content, so working in commercial advertising world, but always harbored the desire and the kind of passion to make stories, to do storytelling. And then so I saved up some money, managed to meet amazing people at Compulsory who believed in the story, and together we decided to make this project. So I'd made some other bits and bobs before with friends and stuff, but Play It Safe was like my first real kind of written and directed by. So I don't know whether that's a bridge. That feels quite long, but that's the story up to now.
No, that's fascinating, and I want to talk about the film obviously quite a bit. It's a really powerful piece. But on that point of kind of your upbringing and your journey, were your parents supportive, family members supportive as you started to transition into filmmaking or acting? Like, did you have mentors? What was that support system like for you?
It's a good question because short answer is no. Initially, I think because I don't know, coming from my background, like traditionally, I think a lot of African backgrounds, I don't think performing arts is like high on priorities of what your parents want you to do. I think I always had pushback, and I think the crucial point came towards the university choice and course, because because I was doing well at school, but I definitely knew I didn't want to go down an academia route, and I wanted to pursue something creative. And the compromise was this media arts course at Royal Holloway, University of London, because it's a highly thought of university. So I knew like the family would be happy and proud in that respect.
Right.
But I knew I could pursue something there that was more creative and yeah, now but to be honest, as soon as things started to take off professionally and yeah, that's I worked in branded like advertising as soon as I left university. So once I think my family realized it was, yeah, I wasn't going to change my mind. It wasn't a phase. I think everyone got fully behind me and yeah, been super supportive and yeah, gone out of their way to help me make a living and to help me, yeah, like get something like Play It Safe made. So yeah, eventually it was a lot of support, but initially there was pushback.
Some skepticism. Yeah, I could imagine. I have to ask, where in Uganda did you spend your childhood? I was just spent some time there in Entebbe and some other parts of the country.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, and did that time, like, do you remember that time of your child? Like, did that
Yeah.
impact you?
Yeah, no, I've got lots of fond memories of Kampala. I used to live in Kampala
Okay.
for,
Yeah.
I can't even remember how many years, over 6 years, I guess. But yeah, so I did, I've still got friends there, basically, like kids that, they're not kids anymore, but yeah, people I grew up with. And yeah, so it's a very, I've got a lot of fond memories of living in Kampala, and yeah, we if it wasn't for the COVID restrictions, I probably would have been there last year. We try and travel
Yeah.
there for, you know.
Yeah, I found it's, striking being there. There's a lot of pride and excitement, I feel like, about the future, and there's also just a lot of young people. Tends to
Mm,
skew younger as a country, and so it's really fascinating to see what their next chapter is. And I just wondered if that
100.
impacted you, being under this kind of quasi-authoritarian regime for
Yeah.
30, 35 years of Museveni. Like, if that, if that upbringing impacted your lens on storytelling or how you think about the world.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I guess I never actually contextualized it like that. And yeah, to be honest, I guess I was quite sheltered from the politics and the kind of
Mhm.
the more complicated aspects of the
Right.
Ugandan identity and everything. But yeah, kind of as a man now, as an older man, looking, I'm definitely looking then more than I used to, and looking to try and connect these different aspects of my personhood. So yeah, no, it's I don't know whether how much it informed my filmmaking up to this point, but I feel like it's going to have a big
Mhm.
factor in where I go from now.
Yeah, I think it might. It's fascinating. I was curious. You mentioned you're the managing director and you co-founded Jamflix, as I understand, which is a film production company.
Yeah, yeah.
You've done a lot of branding content, and you're kind of moving into the more narrative space now. Talk about some of the differences, if any, you see as you approach those different types of projects, and like what are the types of projects broadly that you get excited by?
Okay, yeah. So yeah, Jam is, yeah, it's been my kind of livelihood. And yeah, the work that I do there is, yeah, client work. It's brands who have a message they want to put out there, and you're kind of coming in as a creative support system, I guess, to help them figure out how they can say what they want to say, and obviously to direct talent and pull together the production, all that aspect of it. So I guess it's very nuts and bolts filmmaking, right?
Right.
There's you're just kind of managing people and time, equipment, you know, and you're just making those pieces align, and obviously keeping your clients happy. So yeah, the biggest difference is that root cause of like where you're coming from. I guess with the narrative work, it's coming from yourself, from whatever deep down desire you've got to tell this story. So obviously it's tougher because normally you don't have the money to make your story, so you're always just like pulling favors, and yeah, using your savings and everything else. Like the hustle's real, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's super rewarding, right? And yeah, even if the film hadn't gone anywhere, being able to tell this story and tell it with the people that I told it with, yeah, that in itself would have been a huge reward for that time. So yeah, but I still would encourage, because I think there's like two trains of thoughts, at least between my friendship groups, where some people feel like, oh, it's completely time wasted if you want to make narrative work to do branded content or advertising. Well, it's the same thing, but yeah, I feel like for me it's been quite instrumental in getting me to where I got to, because it's still, you're still doing the same thing basically. You're still telling stories, you're still working with the same tools that you would be in a narrative context, but it's just being expressed in this different way. So yeah, for me, yeah, although it's like mostly yeah, it's to make money and to have an income and everything, at the same time I feel like every shoot that I've done has almost been practice, you know, and it's added to my kind of filmmaking mentality, and it's also introduced me to all the collaborators that I've worked with, and that's a big, that ability to build a community, I think definitely was supported by working in the advertising world.
Yeah, that community is everything. I think it's undervalued sometimes by people who are, haven't experienced the isolation. Especially you think about lockdown and
Yeah, yeah,
artists just being, film is so collaborative, right? So to not have those people
100,
around
yeah.
you. And so did you lean on that community, like to think about this project, for example? Did that, that network and that experience sounds like was really helpful for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like literally the film came together because of yeah, firstly connecting with Jamie Aykroyd, who was the DOP, and me and him had connected on a music video that I did, and we were going to make another music video together, and it didn't happen for whatever reason. But yeah, we started talking. We became friends basically, and I showed him the script and he loved it, and so we swapped notes on that for like months, probably 8 months before we even shot it. And then and I also connected to Chris at Compulsory, who are the production company who came on board and really brought this project to life. But yeah, again, we connected through the kind of music video advertising side of things. But again, I was like, there's this project I'm really passionate about. I've been trying to make it for a long time. I've raised a bit of money, and he was like, dude, I love this. We'll give you however much else you need to make it happen. And then yeah, that's how it got made. So yeah, the whole, yeah, obviously that we did castings and stuff for the on-screen talent, but a lot of the behind the camera talent, I think, were pulled together through these communities.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's really cool, and also just a good example of how to kind of build your community around yourself. I want to talk a little bit, Mitch, about the film. Of course, it's your debut short, as you mentioned, and it's influenced, I understand, by your own personal experience in drama school education, and how folks who identify, especially white folks who identify as liberal and are looking to create quote unquote safe spaces can bring with them just as much prejudice and racism and ingrained stereotypes as anyone else, if not more. So I wonder, like, tell us a little bit, for those who haven't seen the film, and I really hope folks will see it. How did this come together story-wise? What were you looking to do, and why was it so important for you, do you think, to tell this particular story?
So the story came from memories that I had of being at going to these drama classes when I was younger. And I know I wasn't like a full-time student there. I was going on the weekends, but I still felt this this random this weird tension, I guess, and this kind of discomfort, which felt strange because it's kind of outwardly a really welcoming community and quite open and meant to be diverse, but I still felt this kind of unwelcome experience anyway. So, and especially during the animal study classes, I felt in those classes there was a very specific dynamic to me performing as an animal in front of like pretty much an all-white class, and it always stayed in my memory basically. And I remember having this thought whilst in those classes was, what would I do if my teacher asked me to play an ape? Or what would I do if my colleagues, my classmates kind of conspired against me and made me do something demeaning? And so it was like this kind of morbid idea that I had, and it always stayed with me. And then just kind of growing up and working in the advertising industry, another kind of liberal, quote unquote, safe space industry, but still feeling these kind of moments of like racism and implicit bias, and it always just kind of struck me how little of this is represented in cinema or on TV, whatever. Like it just didn't really get called out that much. So that was the kind of genesis of the story for me, was recalling those memories and feeling like, oh, I'm still feeling the same way now as an adult in this kind of corporate safe space as I did in this little drama club after school. And then so that's what inspired me to come up with this narrative, and I wanted to kind of focus the story around this character who decides to show up for themselves. I think in those moments it's this dilemma whether you call out this racism, or you play it safe and you just you shut up basically and try and assimilate and be nice, and don't make other people feel uncomfortable when you're being degraded. But so I wanted to create something that was empowering as well as calling it out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think it accomplishes both things in really powerful ways. And as you say, in the film, we see Jonathan, the main character, essentially coaxed into playing this racial typecast role as of an ape, and just the ways in which I thought it's so ingenious the way you shot those moments of him doing this, because we saw the kind of this almost like white terror and sort of these all those things you described, the ingrained prejudice and racism and sort of the stereotypes that people have, and also the fear that is built up. I felt from the white folks in the piece. So I wonder, like, how did you think about like showing those moments in the film stylistically, and what were you aiming to get across? Because I thought there's just so many ways you could have shot those moments, and it was really what you chose.
So initially I think what's in the film is very close to how I scripted it. Basically, it was just one of those kind of things I didn't look back on until later and realized, oh, okay, this was like literally what I imagined, which was a cool experience. But the first kind of half of the film was just trying to give this kind of subjective experience of Jonathan and how he was feeling in those situations, because he doesn't express himself much. A lot of what's going on for him is under the surface, and it's just like micro expressions on his face and body language. And yeah, so I wanted to get our audiences kind of very caught up in what he's feeling, but at the same time using the camera language in a way that basically pinned him against the wall. I think that's the kind of terminology me and Jamie were talking about, just really pushing him to an edge essentially, and yeah, like the zooms and stuff. And yeah, so that was the language we were talking about. And obviously our gaze is locked on him throughout that first half of the film, which again, yeah, I was hoping to say something about the way these kinds of stories are normally told. So yeah, by that final sequence, when he leaves our gaze, and he's instead of being pinned to the wall, he's in control now. He's taken power, and it's like the camera can't lock him down anymore. It can't pin him, and it's just like searching for him. So I felt like, using the camera language in that way allowed Jonathan, the character, to really kind of, not only did he transform because now he's acting as this ape, but it's so good, but we're only seeing slithers of it, and it kind of, your imagination makes up the rest, and it becomes an even, and then, to be honest, he smashed it on the day. Sadly, I'm a bit sad we didn't even capture it, but yeah, your imagination does a lot to show you how fucking awesome he was. But yeah, but at the same time, with him being on the peripheries and actually flipping the script basically, and that's something I was hoping to do as well with the gaze of the camera. So we don't see him, but we see his classmates and the teacher. And I wanted to just point out that, like, Jonathan is in this position, which is, kind of this negative experience, but we need to remember why he's in this position. We need to remember the system at play that's cornered him here. And instead of just focusing on his victimization, let's look at the people behind that and the role they've played. So yeah, that was the kind of thought process with the camera work.
Yeah, it was fascinating in so many levels, right? Because it's like the way people have to, in some ways, like you said, account for what they've done, but there's also that reclaiming of power. I imagine you were thinking this, but I'm curious if you thought a lot about the history of this connection, because obviously, Black people and Africans, being called ape, monkey, all these horrific, all these sort of demeaning terms of the years, when of course there's also like the great irony of these African cultures, like in Uganda, like protecting these other species who like British colonizers have destroyed in many ways, right? And I was just in these communities, and so as I was watching, I was thinking about sort of that irony, that the way in which like white folks have demeaned Black folks over this decades and centuries, and yet Black communities and African communities have often like revered these animals that they're connected. It's sort of, there's so many layers there. Were you thinking about that and unpacking that?
No, absolutely. Because obviously, being from Rwanda as well, and like the gorillas are like the kind of the national animal, I guess.
Exactly.
They're revered and they are protected, and there's millions of tourists coming there every year to see these guys in the wild. So it's it's really it's very loaded, like very kind of complex, to break that down. But yeah, it's really interesting that yeah, and as I said, like it's funny because there's a lot of tourism based off
Right.
yeah, like white people traveling to see these animals in the wild. And something else that I had in mind was like the human zoos, which like I think I forgot what time period it was, 1900s at some point, where in like I guess in America and some parts of Europe, where you'd go to a zoo to see animals and you'd see like black people in like
Ages.
um
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and so yeah, I guess I was definitely connecting to all, wanting to connect to all those things, but probably without having an overall point about why. But yeah, those were definitely coming up in the research for sure.
Yeah, because I think there's just so many layers there, as you said.
Yeah.
Have these countries. I met a lot of the Ugandan Wildlife Authority people, for example, who are these incredibly dedicated, mostly men and women, who spend the days and days with these mountain gorillas protecting them, and you have these entire communities built on that tourism. So it's just fascinating. You brought up a lot of the contradictions,
Yeah,
in
yeah, no, it's like absurd and darkly funny, but yeah, yeah, it's all there.
how do you see, there's been a lot of talk, at least certainly in the US, I'm sure in the UK, about obviously racism, anti-racism, Black Lives Matter in the last year and a half. I think especially maybe finally among white communities that are finally confronting the realities. But like, how do you see this piece in that context? Because I think you're also bringing up this sort of silent, kind of ingrained
Mm,
racism, right? That
mm,
is, like you said, often pervasive in liberal spaces,
mm,
and in communities and places where, like drama schools, where if you
yeah,
asked, the white people in charge, they would say, "No, we're not racist," right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
what
yeah,
do you think about the timing of this piece and then the impact of it?
yeah. Well, it's so interesting because yeah, like yeah, yeah, when I was thinking about this project, however many years ago, that yeah, it was so far from this recent BLM movement, and even when we shot it, it was just before George Floyd, and I was actually editing it around that time, and it was like shocking to see, yeah, saddening and shocking, and but at the same time super familiar, which was the real sadness about it. And yeah, and as I was editing it, I remembered people who knew that I was making this story sending me articles about lots of drama schools. Basically, in the UK, that was one of the kind of sectors that was that received a lot of backlash for their historic racism and this kind of systematic racism that they had at play. So it was quite I don't know, almost overwhelming a little bit, because I realized how urgent this story had become and how topical it was. Whereas before it felt like it was just like on the peripheries of a conscience movement that was happening anyway. But like now it was like, oh shit, like you better get this right. That was the feeling that I was having, to be honest. And yeah, at the same time, I was like encouraged in maybe that's the wrong word, but I was kind of, it pushed me forward to really take the time to do this project properly, and I'm so happy that it's been able to add to this conversation that's been started, and hopefully start pushing it into, yeah, help push it into these progressive
Mm.
situations that's going on. Because I think as well as, yeah, kind of people feeling seen by the film, like, hey, this is my experience and I'm so glad that you were able to share it, and yeah, like, thank you for this. I think there's been people on the other side who have said, oh shit, like, I didn't realize I was doing this, you know, but I see myself in it in this more negative way. But again, thank you, because now I will do different. And I think, yeah, those reactions have been super, like, yeah, heartwarming. And yeah, you always hope that your filmmaking can do some good in the world. You know, like, it always feels like airy fairy to even think about that. But like, for people to come to a screening or send an email and be like, hey, just so you know, like, this is what this film's done for me, and I think I'm gonna do this in response, like, that has been really special. And I hope, yeah, I hope that I can replicate that in some shape or form in the future, in other work.
Yeah, I mean, that's really powerful. I was going to ask you what the response has been, because it's really powerful that folks have been, and you know, white, black, everything in between.
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
Like, is there something that people have said, especially white people watching this, maybe have said, like, oh crap, like I need to do something differently. Like, I need to maybe check in with, if there's only like one person of color in the space, or you know, the roles that I might have that person take on in a drama setting. Like, what have those people said to you, and or are, you know, is there something that you feel like folks should, white people especially, should take home from this piece and maybe think about?
Yeah, no, like, yeah, pretty much what you were talking about in terms of the responses that have come in. Like, yeah, one of the really powerful ones was a guy who was like, essentially, I see a lot of myself in Henry and Christian, who are the two guys in the short that are trying to get Jonathan to do this role, where essentially, which is, yeah, something we were talking a lot about in the directing of it. But like, these guys aren't trying to be mean. These guys are trying to be Jonathan's friend. They're like, they're in their own strange way, they're trying to connect with him. And these are just their points of reference, sadly, for connecting with Jonathan. So I feel like that aspect of it, of like, that, so yeah, essentially, yeah, I feel like in that piece of feedback that I got, I think this guy was just like, yo, I think I just need to really check in on, like, not only myself and what my ideas of blackness are, like why I'm kind of tempted to go down this road of, yeah, like the gigs that this guy was getting invited to, Jonathan, the kind of movie references he was getting quoted, but also I need to be, because I guess they're in this place where, like, I thought it was a lot of kind of Britishness about it, because it's this this tiptoeing around the edges, right? It's like yeah, so even I think sometimes in those circumstances it could be better to be very upfront and like, I mean, yeah, not about the role they wanted him to play, but some of the other cultural references they bring up. There is a way of bringing that stuff up which allows that person a way to be like, hey, like, that's not cool, you know, or like, actually, that's not for me, maybe for the other people you've talked to, but that's not who I am, and it'd be cool if you didn't kind of put me in this box.
Right.
So, but it's done in this really polite and tiptoeing fashion that's like, it's hard to get to grips with, you know, it's hard to like actually come up with to combat. So yeah, I guess for white people who are watching this film, I'm hoping that they can just have, like, experience some empathy. Put yourself in Jonathan's shoes in this situation. Of course, these characters don't necessarily mean him harm, but that's what makes it so difficult for him in that situation. Like, how can he say, hey, you're being racist to me when you're like doing all this kind of like jujitsu with kindness and like soft words, and it's hard to like for him to really grapple with that. So yeah, empathy is what you hope for, and just like and hopefully it leaves an open platform where white people can be like, hey, where is the line here? Like, where can we talk about these kind of more difficult things? Because yeah, I think sometimes when we try to avoid them completely, we create worse situations. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I don't even know whether I've answered your question there, but
no, I think so. I think you certainly have. And I just think it's such a great like you said, a conversation piece, and hopefully an action oriented piece where people can build empathy who are not in someone else's shoes, who is is like essentially on their own, and because of either the way they look or their sexual orientation, whatever it is. I think you've given us a great lens into the experience of being different and like being the only one, right? In the room.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah, well said. I wish I'd said it that succinctly.
no, it's your piece. I'm just taking from what I got from it. But no, the last question before we do quick wrap up questions, Mitch, was just more broadly on this issue of equity, inclusion, and representation in the industry, because obviously you've I think started your short filmmaking career, and hopefully long career, and in this vein of, it's really important not only that we see people who are different from us on screen and who are marginalized, but also the ways in which we see them and how they're portrayed is so important, which I think is a great takeaway from your film. So how do you think about more broadly the changes you'd like to see, as a filmmaker of color, as someone who maybe perhaps wants to tell stories that are moving us towards that more inclusive, equitable path?
Yeah, exactly what you were saying. I think we've kind of we're moving towards a really more progressive industry with regards to representation, but I feel like I think we should be concerned about the quality of the representation and the kind of the stories we're telling with this representation. I feel like there's been a lot of focus on victimization. There's been a lot of focus on kind of historic issues of race and representation and inclusivity. But I feel like now the cinema gives us an opportunity to look forward and to kind of create what we want to see. So instead of like to keep repeating some of the kind of more accepted, more archetypal moments of representation, I feel like, we should be looking to not turn them on their head or whatever. I think there's space for that, but there's space for something new now. Something me and Jonathan talked a lot about in the process of making this was his character, which was this kind of softly spoken, kind of shy, awkward, just like unsure of himself, Black young man. And it's like this and it's strange how little you see that kind of representation on screen. Like when you think about a Black man on screen, we've got archetypes that jump in our head like very quickly, and all of them are just, as I said, I feel that there is space for those, but we should be looking to create new representations as well. And just keep the convo going, keep the conversation going, and instead of stopping where we've got to, which is just pure representation. As long as it's a
Yeah,
black person, as long as it's a trans
exactly.
person, as long as it's, do you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
feel like we can go further now.
Yeah, I think there is a rush by Hollywood to certainly kind of grab the nearest person, the nearest person of color, the nearest marginalized person, and they'd be like, "We did it.
Yeah, we did our job. Yeah, no, yeah,
Yeah,
that's.
yeah,
I feel like that's what's happening sometimes, and but yeah, and yeah, I feel we can go to more interesting places um, once we actually explore those representations
Mhm.
past just their representation.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And I think you've really done that in a beautiful way. I had a quick rapid fire last question for you, which is,
yeah,
think about maybe 10 years from now in your career as a filmmaker. What do you want to be doing? Like, is there a certain kind of project you want to be making? Is there a certain, genre you want to be in?
yeah. I yeah, like even before he made Parasite, uh, Boon Joon-ho is like, yeah, I feel what he's managed to do with like genre that explores kind of really interesting themes around, yeah, society and just explores lots of complex themes, but in this super entertaining package, is something I've always been drawn to. So like, yeah, Memories of Murder, The Host, um, and now Parasite. Like, to me, he is the master for sure. And like, if I
Mm.
could replicate something close to what he's done, I'd be super happy.
Yeah, no, I could totally see you going there. I mean, you're already on doing some Get Out vibes, and
Yeah, yeah, and Jordan Peele as well. Yeah, yeah. What Jordan Peele's doing
yeah.
recently as well. Like, it's
Mhm.
so, yeah. Like, those are the filmmakers and the films that I watch, and I'm like motivated, and I'm like, yeah. I feel like some kind of cinema that I'm really into
Mhm.
um, is out there, and it just motivates me to make some of my own.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I can't wait to see what you do next, Mitch. So again, guest there is Mitch Kalisa. The film is Play It Safe. It's a really powerful short, and I hope it continues on its journey on the festival circuit. Congratulations, all the success with it, Mitch, and really
Thank you
excited
so
to see your
much. No, thank you a lot. Thanks for your time as well. Cheers.
next.